Personally, if I'm being honest, I've felt like I've lost a little bit of a spark of being excited about being in this industry, especially going to events all around the world where it feels like the same speakers, the same kind of topics, the same sort of beige feel of what we are doing as an industry. And I think we are an insanely human experiential industry. In other words, without humans, we're not doing much of a unique value proposition. And yet sometimes we get a little carried away with AI. We get a little carried away with the business of tours. Obviously, it's important, but if a sense of purpose and a sense of connection to people and to the place isn't the root of all of that, then what are we doing here? That's kind of the question that I've been asking myself, and I want to answer it through the programming and the design of our next conference. Hi, Tourpreneurs. Welcome to another episode of the Tourpreneur Travel Business Podcast. I'm Mitch Bach. Today, we have a very special episode where we don't have an external guest. Instead, it's just myself, Peter Syme, and Kyle Campbell, all parts of the Tourpreneur team. And we wanted to talk all things in person. We just reached 20,000 members of our Facebook group. 80 to 90% of you are visiting the group on an active basis and chiming in with every question and answer you can possibly imagine about your business. But at the beating heart, in our opinion, of what's happening online is the connections that are happening in person, the business connections, but also the personal friendships and just knowing faces that make online community so much more meaningful. And so we've really made a big effort over the past year to lean into in-person meetups, and everything that we do at Tourpreneur is more of an experiment than anything official. And we've been doing a lot of experimentation, including having Kyle Campbell really take the lead in being a personal host of some of the ones in Nashville, in London, and developing what the future of these meetups are going to be. And it involves you, the listener, whoever you are. I wanted to invite Kyle on here to just kind of talk through your learnings recently about some of the events that you've been hosting for the Tourpreneur community and get your general read on what we should be doing next for the community.
Yeah, well, I can absolutely attest to the power of these shindigs. It's been such a joy to gather operators and guides and just local travel professionals, whether it's here in London, in Nashville, and everywhere in between. And I would say the number one thing that's been evident is how refreshing it is just to come together that's informal, that's not with lanyards and talking heads and schedules and even needing to get anything out of it, but just to connect, kind of recalibrate, and then walk away feeling like, yes, I'm a part of something that goes beyond just me sitting at home in front of my computer. And so for me, that's been the biggest joy, has just been everyone walks away not wanting to leave, first of all, staying out late and feeling excited and ready for the next one.
The man who maybe stays out the latest of them all is next to me on this call. Peter Syme, what's been your experience with the Shindigs? You've actually been traveling all around the world to them as well.
You've got to have resilience if you're going to go out and mix with people and make the most of time. Time's the most valuable thing you have. So when you have in-person time, you have to make the most of that in-person time, hence spend as many hours with our members as possible, helping them with the business and introducing to them to other people who can help them with the business. So from bouncing around the world at shindigs all over the world, all we're doing is acting as a vehicle to connect people with other people. We can only do so much for the helping for your business and stuff. Hopefully we do. But the real benefit comes because you're going to meet people at these events that are going to be able to help your business, be that other suppliers, be it accommodation people, be it people who just are in the same business as you and have had the same pains and difficult journey as you're having, and they're going to be able to help you because everybody in this community is pretty willing to help everybody else. So just that getting to know people. The other thing that always amazes me, and it shouldn't, because some of the cities we have these in are quite big, so you don't expect everybody to know everybody. But even in some of the smaller destinations, there's a lot of tourism operators who are in the same destination who don't know each other. They've never met each other. Even though they're working in the same destination, they may be in competition, they may not be in competition, but they don't actually know each other. I know from all my years in tour operating that you need to have a network. You need to know as many people in tourism as possible, because the bigger and wider your network, the stronger you can make your business.
I've taken away so much work just by meeting 5 or 6 people that to enhance my tours just by coming to one of these gatherings.
It's also meeting some of our suppliers, like the technology companies that we all work with and many of our preferred partners. If they have people in the city, they turn up and they show up at our Shindigs. This last one we had in London the other week there, Get Your Guide were there, Booking was there, Fellow was there. There was various service companies there. Now, sometimes it's quite hard to get communication with these bigger companies. But if you're at a shindig, you can speak to the representatives there face to face and bring up your points, good or bad, but get a real live human actually having a real live conversation with you about your challenges and your issues.
Yeah, I like the faces of the companies showing up because it just makes it human. And we encourage all of our partners, we encourage all of the tech companies in the areas where we go to show up. Sometimes we get sheepish emails saying, "Is it all right if I come?" Yes, we want more. We want that connection. And, you know, there's no shortage of industry meetups, but there has been a shortage of specifically for tours and activities. And I think, Kyle, I know you are so active in London in the scene. What's it been like for you, sort of thinking about the difference between what we're doing and the other kinds of meetups that you've been attending?
I feel like what we're doing, it feels more organic. It doesn't feel forced or overly scheduled or programmed. And so there's a more freedom and flexibility to let the night evolve versus having something that's timed and scheduled and the end. And so I like that we have that freedom. And then if we finish at one place, we move to the next. We keep those conversations going. And I think too, just coming in a cities like London, where it's so there's a convergence of people from all over the world who are from other places. It's kind of nice to feel like you're all on the same thing together. I find that the choosing the location is important to kind of add to that informal where you don't feel like it's stuffy or that you're kind of out of place. And so oftentimes people who've never been will come and they, like you said, feel a little sheepish or unsure of their belonging. And they always come back and say, "I felt so welcomed. Thank you so much. I had a lot of fun." So I think that really has been a testament to the power of what this provides for people.
So you and Christy Hunter hosted one in Nashville, and it looked beautiful. But also, you had people from kind of just the general hospitality industry showing up. Talk
Yes.
to me about your thoughts about marrying that side of our industry with what we're doing.
For too long, in my opinion, it's existed like these two separate silos. Like we all need each other, but we've had our kind of almost segregated events. And I'm a huge advocate for bringing the hospitality side into these gatherings because not only are they one more piece to our puzzle, finding new experiences, of finding new locations, new hotels, new restaurants, it's also for them to have insight to what we do and make what they do better. And so I don't think we do enough of it. And I'm a huge advocate for inviting more of the hospitality industry into these events because we're all working towards the same thing, is that's to provide for our guests something that's memorable and enjoyable and unique and beautiful.
The other thing with the hospitality industry, which is really relevant at the moment, and I get this every week on coaching calls from our multi-day operators, it's become much harder to work with hotels and accommodation post-COVID than it was pre-COVID. It is much more challenging as a tour operator to work with these people at the moment. A lot of that's just to do with the boom in travel for the last God number of years. So the demand in a lot of locations around the world has been exceeding supply, and tour operators have been kind of forced down the pecking order. Therefore, if that is happening, how do you get around that? And I get this question virtually weekly on coaching calls. How do you get around that? Emails ain't the way to get around it. The way to get around that is actually meeting people in person who work and live and treat that hotel as their passion, and see if
Yeah.
we can get a relationship with the right people and the right accommodation. And that's got the best chance of smoothing the waves that there is in the relationship between tour operators and accommodation at the moment. That's my dog just joining in, for anybody listening.
He agrees.
He wants to go and book into a hotel because he doesn't like staying with me anymore. That, I think, is a great thing of getting the right people to meet the right people in the accommodation sector that can help with this demand and supply problem we've got at the moment.
And I think it's also just even just to hear from one another solutions to problems. I mean, just sometimes like one conversation, you give insight and perspective, and all of a sudden you have a new angle at which before you didn't necessarily have that solution, or now you've made that connection. So for me, I found that even for us looking for locations for these shindigs, we had a group of three young women who were marketers for a property that is a new bar that just opened up in a Printer's Alley in Nashville. And when they saw what we're doing, they immediately offered their space to us. And so even just to not even have to ask to be invited, simply because they see what we're doing and what we're a part of and what it kind of opens their mind to possibilities. And that's so then it's a win-win for everyone.
I always call it partner first business building rather than product first. Like version one is I sit at home and I dream up the next tour or the next thing that I'm going to build. And then I go out and I find the people. But version two is you find people that you connect with, you work with, you can brainstorm with. They're open to collaboration. And then you figure out what can we do together. And I much prefer that because it just makes for an more interesting life than trying to force a square peg into a round hole. Kyle, what does it take to host a shindig? So the reason for hosting this podcast is we want people in the audience to come to us, and you are now the point person that is just focused on this. We really want to
Yes.
grow it. We really want to develop it. What does it take for somebody to step up?
In the past, we just kind of threw it out there and said, anybody who can host, let's make it happen. But now we're trying to kind of pull back and be more strategic about the locations. And so we'll start with about 20 to 25 locations, cities around the world. But the biggest thing for a host is someone who's willing and has the time, who's enthusiastic and gathering people, who knows the location where you're hosting, who has ideas, who's not someone who needs to have their hand held, but is going to initiate and take it and run with it and be collaborative. So we'll get you set up, get you the tools that you need, but then for you to be able to take that to the next level and to take the vision that we have for Tourpreneur Shindigs and make it your own, that's unique to your city, to your location, but to be available at least anywhere from 2 to 4 times a year, and to be just really, it's a passion and excitement, organized, and will be consistent to follow through with this because that's also important. It's one thing to have the willingness and excitement, it's another thing to show up for it.
There's also different ways you can run a shindig for those who are considering doing it. A lot depends on your destination. If you're in London or New York or Kuala Lumpur or Bangkok, there's thousands and thousands of operators in each of these destinations, so the traffic can be quite high. But if you're in a small rural outback and there may only be another 5 or 10 operators around you, it's going to be a different type of event, with 10 people there or 50 or 70, like we've had at some of the events. Also, the structure of the day, is it just social in the evening where you all get together and network, or is there an actual structure where we do workshops? The one we've done recently, we did a tour with a company in the morning. We then did a critique of that tour and the company. We then did a podcast for that company. We can do a workshop after that and then go into social in the evening. So a lot of it, depending on who the host is and the destination and what they want to do, it can be just social, or it can be an actual proactive where Mitch or myself or somebody flies in and we'll do a workshop and actually get some real good business benefit out on top of the networking, which is a real business benefit, obviously.
And Mitch, one thing that I love that you brought up this last time is the idea of being able to be known for this, to go beyond just a time to get together and connect, which is absolutely important. But what are some ways we can think of beyond that to be more creative and to make this something that people talk about long after they've come for the night? And so I love your idea around that. If you want to share more about what your thoughts were.
My thoughts.
You were talking about wanting it to be known for more than just a meetup, that something that people talk about. We talked about the place in Paris, hosting.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Don't worry, I'll edit this part out.
I'll put you
Um,
on the spot.
no, it's fine. I didn't know where we were going with that.
Too many drinks in.
I think when it comes to gathering, the experience of the gathering is important, and we've been victim of this ourselves. We're not perfect by any stretch. In fact, we're highly imperfect. A lot of the earliest shindigs were just people showing up in a bar randomly and without a lot of intention. And I just think that in-person gathering is too important to leave to it being too random. It doesn't need to be overly designed, but I do think that where you gather, how you gather, Kyle, we experimented with just a simple new icebreaker question that really livened things up. And I want to do more of that. I want to find more interesting places so that the place itself says, wow, this is special, this is unique. Maybe design a little bit for, yes, not only education and conversation, but also connection in the way that a really good question can sort of open up the possibilities in the room in a way that if people just kind of were left to their own devices to walk around and gather and drink, it would be different. And so I'm interested in experimenting with that, finding unique locations, finding unique people, collaborating and creating a new way of gathering than the traditional old tourism or industry kind of networking event. And, I also think there could be some fun things like gamification, like there could be a little game show aspect. I was fed on social media for a while a bunch of clips of the British TV show Would I Lie to You? And it got me thinking, how fun would it be to have like industry people up on stage or like, in front of us, like lying to us and deciding what was bullshit and what wasn't, or sharing crazy tour stories. And I think some of that storytelling, obviously, it comes out naturally individually, but there's a way that as a gathering of a group, we could maybe live up to the fact that we are in the experience economy and be a little more experiential.
Agreed.
The other thing is, a lot of these destinations have universities and colleges that have whole departments training people in tourism. And so these are college graduates, young people, 20, 21, 22, looking to make a life in tourism. I would suggest these sort of events are exactly the sort of events these people should be attending, to actually meet people who are working in tourism, to build the connections earlier in the career.
Well, we've had several people in all of the shindigs I've attended where this is their first ever travel event. Like they are fresh in the tourism industry, and this was actually their introduction to a travel event. And so it's an incredible opportunity to leave an impression and to point people to the connections they need out the gate for them in that industry. So I think that's a great idea to tap into those who are just starting their journey in this industry, because so many of us who've been at this for decades, it's easy to fall into a mentoring role, but just to again bring everyone into the fold and say you're all part of this.
So we're now 3 months away from a very large shindig, otherwise known as TourWeek. So our next conference is going to be a global conference that brings together our day tour event and our multi-day tour event and the spirit of our shindigs. But also, I run a separate conference called TripCon, which is for my tour guide and tour director training school. And that's going to be happening at the same time in the same place. And we're going to call the whole conference Tour Week. The idea is something new for the industry. I just wrote about this on LinkedIn and got a huge response. Personally, if I'm being honest, I've felt like I've lost a little bit of a spark of being excited about being in this industry, especially going to events all around the world where it feels like the same speakers, the same kind of topics, the same sort of beige feel of what we are doing as an industry. And I think we are an insanely human experiential industry. In other words, without humans, we're not doing much of a unique value proposition. And yet sometimes we get a little carried away with it. The business of tours, obviously it's important, but if a sense of purpose and a sense of connection to people and to the place isn't the root of all of that, then what are we doing here? That's kind of the question that I've been asking myself, and I want to answer it through the programming and the design of our next conference. Kyle, I'm going to throw it to you first before Pete shoots me down. What are your thoughts on the shape of Tour Week, and what are you excited about?
I'm excited about flipping some of the approach to how we how do I put this? The normal way of having, not normal, but historically, you have these conferences and you have big CEOs or kind of heads of companies sharing, and you need the data, you need the info and the research, which is important. But so often it's people who are kind of at the top tier. Often I feel disconnected from those of us kind of in the front lines of what we do. And so I love the idea of bringing peers in and elevating them in ways to talk about just different aspects of things that we all do naturally, but we don't often think about that others might not do this as naturally and could learn from. So really reconsidering who we bring in, how we do it, and what the benefit of it is, but also to be kind of refreshed and excited about the topics and the conversations versus it just to be about sitting and listening to more research and more numbers and data and writing it all down and thinking I've got to learn this step, but for what? And I like the idea of coming in and being inspired and challenged and refreshed by that's what I would journey halfway across the ocean for, not for somebody reading a report that I could really just get online at the end of the day.
Well, I hope you journey all the way across the ocean
I
so you
am.
make it to Charleston. Pete, when's the last time you felt refreshed?
92. I've been knackered since then. So why do people go to conferences, travel conferences? There's 1,000 reasons why people go, but I would bet you number one and number two is to meet other people like them. So they want to interact and network with other people like them and have conversations about the things that they're experiencing in their business and life at the time. And the other reason they go is to get business. People need business. If they're going to justify flying, hotels, expense, they want to meet other people like them, but they also want to get business. And then there'll be another 10 reasons people go to conferences as well. But those two, I'm sure, are in the top three of most people traveling to a conference, to generate business and to meet other people and learn from other people just like them. So when you're programming, if you've got those two things in mind, how do you facilitate people getting business from other people, making the right connections, making the right spaces that people get to have these conversations? And design in a way that you got to remember that, and I've always found this weird, but it is a fact. A lot of us are quite outgoing and we can walk into a room and speak to anybody and not think about it. A lot of people who go to conferences aren't. That even though they're tour operators and they're running tour businesses, maybe even guiding, you see a lot of people at conferences who maybe it's their first time at a conference, or they're just naturally introverted a little bit, but if you spent 3 days at a conference and you haven't met 50 people, well, your 3 days has sort of been kind of wasted. So you've got to create an environment where people that aren't as confident can get to meet the people they need to meet to get the value out of the event. And the other reason, obviously, I go to Charleston is we're going to have a party on an aircraft carrier. So who wouldn't want to go and not have a party on an aircraft carrier?
Well, and I'd add to that and say that the expectations are always to network into business. That's important. Just like when I sit down to create a trip, I know that there's a general consensus of what people want when they travel and why. And even they'll tell you before they travel, this is what I'm hoping for, looking for. But often when people leave, what they say that they got from what that experience is never what they necessarily came to for. And so I love the thought of being able to, yes, that they're going to come and they're going to make business connections and network, learn, grow, but that they're going to get something more than what they ever expected. And I love the thought and the challenge of how can we do that for people.
Yeah, it's shaking it up a little bit. First of all, it's going to be right in the heart of Charleston, 2 days of taking tours. In fact, you could take tours during the whole conference if you wanted, but actually being in a food tourism environment, talking about culinary tourism, actually being on the water, talking about water sports, actually being in the places where we as place-based businesses do our business. And it's right outside the front door of the event. I think the other thing is celebrating us as an industry for all of our weirdness and our wildness. I'm really leaning into weird. I think we don't have a choice because all of us here are. But the posted on the Facebook group a week ago, what if we did awards just for wonderful and weird and interesting and original businesses, not because they're the quote unquote best or they got the most reviews according to some kind of thing, but because they show us the breadth and possibility of what it
Mm,
means to be a travel experience creator. So inspirational awards are not kind of congratulatory. There's plenty of those out there. There's plenty of those kinds
yeah,
of awards out there, but there aren't inspirational awards that make people go, wow, what an incredible wide industry we work in, and get new fresh ideas potentially for your business.
I love
Uh,
it. I think it's
other other things, a no CEO promise for our main our big talks. Like, again, there are plenty of events that feature that, but they're not usually the most dynamic or compelling or interesting presenters or information givers if you are a small business owner out there that's looking for practical tactical strategies. It might look impressive, but we're kind of reinventing what that kind of content looks like, bringing in people not from our industry. I really, really want an entirely fresh new lineup of people at this event and just see what happens. And then, when it comes to kind of the practical stuff, we're creating this space called the Tour Clinic, which is essentially going to be a hospital for your business, where instead of sponsors just sitting by their booth all day hoping somebody stops by, you come with a problem into the Tour Clinic, and we're going to have professionals from across the industry that have those answers, that can sit there and in, I don't know, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, whatever it's going to
triage.
be, just triage you so that you literally leave the event not only feeling inspired, but with a doctor having put something on your wound. Maybe I need a new metaphor than that, but you get the idea.
I love that idea. I think I mean, for me, I mean, especially when I was just starting out, I had so many questions and it was like I just one person could just sit with me and give me this answer. And I just didn't know who to ask, or I didn't have thousands of dollars to pay for someone to give me 20 minutes of their time to give me an answer. And so I think this is going to be hugely beneficial for everyone, more than I think we even realize.
We get this on the coaching calls every week as well with people. There's so much to do when you're a small operator. You've got 56,000 things going on all the time. Organization is your number one thing you have to do. When you have too much to do, and everybody who's a small operator who's maybe just employing one or two people, or even a small company who've got 10, 15 people, you'll still have too much to do. Your to-do list will always be bigger than what you're getting through, because every week there's new things to be added to it. So it becomes a prioritization thing. And I've noticed, especially with new operators or ones that have only been going a couple of years, the prioritization is challenging for them. They're not sure what should be sitting at the top of the list and what should be at the bottom of the list. And that getting some hard, great advice about what is important and what is less important. Everything's important, but it's putting a grading of importance on it and what has to be done and what can be left to another day to get done. And unfortunately, a lot of our members tend to focus on stuff that's not going to move the needle in their business. And if you want to move the needle, you've got to focus on 2 or 3 things, which are all to do with sales, all to do with marketing, and all to do with distribution.
Ugh. All right, you just said distribution, so it means it's time to end this before you go off
Yeah,
on a tangent
and
and
pricing.
ruin and crush the vibe. Kyle, any last words about the future of in person for Tourpreneur? We're really happy and thankful, by the way, that you are here to help lend some order to our
Yes.
chaos.
Well, I just want to put out there that I know many have reached out, and we are in the middle of revamping all of this and with very clear direction. And so if you have a desire and a heart to host in a city, I'm going to put info out on Facebook and LinkedIn on the cities that we're really trying to hone in on first. It's going to be our top priorities to really get those going. And it's important for me that the people who do say yes to it, like this yes means yes, not just a general interest, but a committed yes.
And if you're interested in speaking at Tour Week or being a doctor at the Tour Clinic or being a sponsor or a participant, just email us at hello at tourpreneur.com. Also, if you're interested in hosting, and we'll just connect you with Kyle or whomever. And thank you all for listening. Thank you all for being a member of the Tourpreneur family out there. And we look forward to seeing you in Charleston, or hopefully at one of our next Shindigs.